Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another Talk, Listen, Collaborate podcast episode. Wait, we told you that there would be 4 episodes related to educational research this spring. We already met with Dr. Kelly Blevin, Dr. Ann Spolaritz, Dr. Allison Snyder, and Dr. Kathleen Matheson. That's 4, right, Brittany?
Yeah, but we're here to offer a bonus episode. We're just having way too much fun recording these podcasts to stop. Plus, we have another special guest to talk about on a very special topic.
Oh, that's right. In this bonus episode, we get to sit down with the mastermind behind our recent virtual events, getting together in GatherTown to grow our educational research community. This spring event in April was designed to facilitate conversations about educational research ideas, explore collaboration opportunities, and celebrate those who have participated in educational research this year, all within a novel virtual environment. During this planning process, the Teaching and Learning Center received many insightful and provoking questions from the ATSU community about GatherTown as a tool and our process for planning and implementing this event. We felt these questions could best be answered by sitting down and unpacking what we learned from the experience. And today we have another fun discussion and dive into a few of the nitty-gritty details for our planning and facilitation process. We will explore how we might use this tool, GatherTown, to host a virtual networking or collaborative event on our own and consider some viable opportunities to use this tool in higher education context. Our special guest for this episode is our colleague and superstar teammate, Dr. Julie Speer, who led the planning and execution of the recent GatherTown Educational Research Networking event. Dr. Speer is an instructional designer here in the TLC. Her passions include assisting faculty in developing and implementing effective, equitable, and inclusive learning environments. Along with the amazing work she is doing alongside our faculty, Dr. Speer is an active researcher focused on areas such as mentorship, faculty development, reflective teaching, and inclusive pedagogy. Dr. Speer, we would like to welcome you to the other side of the mic on the Talk, Listen, and Collaborate podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Julie, for our listeners who may not be familiar with GatherTown, how would you describe it?
The way I describe it is that GatherTown is a novel platform that allows you to build virtual spaces. So I know that's a little hard to picture if you haven't seen it, but think of, you could build a classroom, you could build a library, you could build, really could look like a lot of different things, but you build a space. And in this space, you can fill it with interactive items, decorations. Again, you get to choose what this space looks like. And then each person who's attending your event or entering into this world gets to log in as an avatar, a little digital person that you can use your keyboard to move around. So as you're moving around, you get to explore the space and interact with others. And that's where that interactive piece comes in, because as I'm moving around, I might bump into Brittany, who's standing by a bookshelf. And as we begin to approach each other, our cameras will connect and our microphones will turn on. And that allows us to begin to communicate. And actually, as we then, let's say I've seen Brittany, I've said hi, and now I want to go say hi to Quincy. As I walk away from Brittany and toward Quincy, my camera will disconnect from Brittany's and begin to connect to Quincy's. So it's this platform that really allows for both group discussions as well as these side conversations and personal interactions. And let's say I have a question for Quincy that I really want to ask him individually. I can pull him into a private space and we can have that conversation without being overheard, kind of simulating someone walking into an office space or hey, can you step over here? So it's really, it's hard to describe because it can look like so many different things, but it's really a wonderful platform that allows you to build these events and these spaces where people can move around and interact together, work independently and in groups in a way that more mimics in-person interactions than Zoom.
Can you tell us a little bit about the educational research networking idea that the TLC hosted in April? And can you explain how you first came up with that idea to hold it as a virtual interprofessional school-wide event to shine and spotlight that light on educational research?
Absolutely. So I think the idea really came about because we were interested in finding a way to really create a dynamic event where people could share their ideas and network and get to know each other. And there was an opportunity to use this novel platform, GatherTown, to really facilitate that. So the technology really became the tool towards the goal of creating an event where we could recognize those across ATSU who are engaging in educational research, really celebrate them and the work that they're doing, their contributions to the scholarship of teaching and learning, and also create a space where people could really just get to know each other, right? I think that's been something that has kind of been missing because of the pandemic, right? I think people are really itching to get back in person and to get to see each other face to face. And what we really wanted to do was allow that to happen across campuses and for some of our folks in different cities and states, right? And so to be able to still host what felt a little bit more like an in-person event virtually.
Very cool and very needed, to say the least. That we're hearing on the streets, especially after that, it was nice to have somewhat of a elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder type of experience. So that I couldn't agree more with that. Besides that format, what value did you see in hosting the TLC, the TLC hosting an event like this? It's been some time now. Are you seeing any reverberations? What do you think the impact has been?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the really unique things about the TLC hosting it is our position, right? We're not affiliated with just one school or college or one department. And so from that position, we're able to create a space where lots of people can come to the table and really interdisciplinary group that can share their perspectives and their backgrounds and get to know one another. I think the other thing too is thinking about the contributions to research, but also how this tool could be used in other aspects of teaching. So the tool is really exciting. I think it has a lot of applicability, both for events like this, kind of the networking, gathering, brainstorming, celebration aspect, but also really introducing some different, introducing educators to some different tools. And I think GatherTown is a really unique one to bring into events and discussions of all types.
Very cool. So you mentioned a little bit about working alongside other departments, other connections. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you determined who you'd partner with? How would we get those other collaborators involved? Can you talk us through that process?
So it absolutely was a team effort, and we had reached out to folks really on two sides of things. So starting first, we knew that we would want some help, tech help on the ground, day of, helping us facilitate the event. And so we reached out to IT and members of the AT Still Research Institute for assistance and support on the technology side. And we had really wonderful help from Ms. G. Franklin, Ms. Sarah Ambini Rad, and Ms. Jane Johnson, who served as our technology docents. And they were instrumental in helping to direct participants around the virtual space and able to help troubleshoot technology challenges when they came up during the event. So that was incredible help and assistance and collaboration. We also wanted this to be an event where we could pull from the knowledge and the experience of people all around the campuses who are doing work in the educational research space and in the research support side of things. And so we invited a couple of people who are on the call today. So we had Dr. Quincy Conley, as well as Ms. Brittany Williams, help lead small groups. And alongside of them, we had Dr. Kaylee Welch-Bacon, Dr. Hanan Tomei, Dr. Hanan Omar, and Dr. Joan Davis, who helped lead our small group conversations, which is really kind of part 2 or 3 of our event. And then we also reached out to amazing groups around campus who are on the research support side. So we had reached out to the Institutional Review Board from Arizona. So we had representatives, Dr. Kurt Bay and Ms. Bridget Chicharello, who helped us and represented the Institutional Review Board, or IRB. We had representatives from Library Services. Ms. Laura Lipke joined us on the day. We had Mr. Jack Morris represent research support, and we had 2 representatives from sponsored programs, both representing pre and post award, and those representatives were Ms. Debbie Clay and Ms. Carrie Gaines. So this was absolutely a group effort. We had so many people who were willing to share their time, their knowledge, their expertise, and really were active and really involved on both the planning side and during the event itself.
That is amazing. So I don't know if you've gotten this same question, but I've had people reach out to me and say, this event was just run so well, so smoothly. It seemed effortless, which is always a wonderful compliment, right? We know how much work goes into the planning of an event like this. And you talked a little bit about playing to people's strengths. Would you say anything more about how you delegated the planning activities? Did you take it all on yourself, or how did you go about planning such a large event with a lot of moving pieces?
Yeah, it's always the tip of the iceberg, right? That you see on the day. I think, as you mentioned, it was a process. There was a lot that went into making the event, from the brainstorming side to the execution. And it was absolutely, as I mentioned, we had amazing collaborators, but just as amazing, we had a lot of work from our team and from Ms. Brenda Jackson as well, helping us to brainstorm and bring the event to be. So I think, part one of that was really figuring out what the event would look and feel like. Right. And that was a team effort. Quincy, I'm wondering, I came to you maybe in December, maybe a little before that, right? Definitely the fall last year, and kind of brought this idea of having this dynamic, interactive event using a really different tool that people hadn't really used a lot before. So there was the brainstorming side. I'm curious, what did you think when I brought this idea to you?
I thought it was foretelling. I thought it was right on time. Leading up to that moment, that you said, "Hey, Quincy, I've got this idea. I'm thinking of this." We had been, one of the things that I think that TLC takes deep pride in is listening. Hence the podcast, listen, the L in the podcast. But that's part of our job, right? To make sure that we're meeting the needs of our constituents, our faculty, our staff, our leadership. We have to be good listeners. We have to be paying attention, and we're always striving to figure out new ways to do that. One of the things that we kept hearing is people were kind of sick of Zoom, and people were sick of what had been done, the usual environments, the usual formats. People were trying to find a more natural way of sharing ideas and collaborating and getting that collegial spirit back that makes, it's kind of our lifeblood of educators and higher ed. We like to go and share our results and our ideas and the research and those things. So we have been hearing that for a little while by the fall of 2021, that people were trying to do that. And mostly it came in the format of like, whatever is being done now isn't working very well. It's not that intuitive. So when you came to me, I was like, I don't even know if you had it all the way out of your mind. And I was like, yep, we're doing this, and we're doing it on Tuesday. I knew it took probably a better lead up, run up to be able to execute on it, but I just felt like it was right on time. I thought it was so fitting. The results that tell me that this was appropriate, I feel are being confirmed even since then, where the ICMT conference 2022 that just recently happened the month of June went really smooth. Similar feedback, similar reaction, and then continuing to listen, which we do here in the TLC. We're networking. We're on that listening tour. We're connecting with other departments and seeing what they need. And they're like, this could be an annual thing for our department, our students. And now we're not just focused on the instructors and the educators that are doing research. We're now looking at it from all angles. So yeah, I would say overwhelming, super proud of this, that you brought this to the team and how well it went and how well we executed on it. So I really appreciated you bringing this idea. Good idea. Great idea.
Well, thanks. Fantastic. And yeah, I really appreciated the vote of confidence. To back Brittany, to your original question, but there was the getting it off the ground, getting people interested in the idea and beginning to visualize what that could look like. And then the work starts, right? So that really looked like building the space. So GatherTown offers a range in terms of you can design, completely customize the space, the virtual space, or you can use one of their kind of prepackaged virtual environments. And so we knew we wanted to create a space that was going to lend itself to our event type and to really model what the tool can use. So I think part one of the planning was building that out, right? We created a space that had multiple rooms, it had multiple interactive elements. As we began to do that, we started thinking about, well, what would the schedule look like, right? What's the timeline here? And that's when we started to do a deep dive into what are our sub goals? What's the rest of the program going to look like? We knew we wanted it to have this recognition ceremony, and we knew we wanted to facilitate group conversations. But what we really then did was plan a multi-part event. So part one, we opened the room. And it was so exciting seeing, for the first time, people populate the space. So people came in and we allowed people to kind of move around and network for a few minutes, and then did a little bit of a demo and a tour. So we walked people around and showed them how to use the tool and how to interact with the environment. And then started a educational recognition ceremony. And then we had kind of two other interactive elements. So the first was a small group discussions on research topics. And then the third was a research support group open house. So that lent itself to different rooms, different environments, different ways of interacting. So from that, having identified the schedule and the timeline of the event, then we had to reach out to the people, right? And everyone that we reached out to was so gracious with their time. And I was so blown away by the support. And it was so fantastic to see people really interested in engaging in this really unique platform. I think we've all gotten really used to Zoom. And so I was just really impressed that people were willing to take this leap of faith and kind of stick with us. And as we asked them to try out another tool, right, which we've all been kind of taxed with doing over the last couple of years. So there was that. And then on the other side of it, it was also getting people prepared to use the tool. So I mentioned that we gave a demo and a tour on day of, but also we wanted to communicate with our presenters and our docents early on and often about how to use the tool so that they'd feel prepared and comfortable to go in and lead a discussion. And we also created training videos for our audience and participants to know kind of what to expect. So yeah, there definitely was a good amount of planning that went into the event. I'm glad it looked effortless. It's great to get that feedback. There was definitely so much discussion as a team. There was absolutely delegation of tasks. And I was so grateful for the support of my teammates on the call and Ms. Brenda Jackson for their feedback and trying it out with me. We so many times hopped into the room and did a little demo ourselves and making sure that every bit of the experience was going to work the way that we thought it would.
Well, you're always so gracious and graceful at doing something like this. We know that there was a considerable amount of effort. Talk to us about the time. So you've already kind of alluded to it. We started this conversation late 2021. What went into this? How would you do this? And the reason I'm asking is maybe our listeners can get a sense of how they might approach something like this. What are your thoughts on the time commitment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I just want to say, when I share the amount of time, this was a big scale event. So I think that the amount of time would definitely vary if you're using this for a group meeting versus an international conference. But we, as I mentioned, started thinking about this early December. We really started chipping away at it. I think it was, a couple hours here and there, and that added up. There were times where it was a little bit more effort intensive in terms of getting materials out. The training videos, for example, took a significant amount of time to make, but I think it really was working on it alongside all the other projects that we were doing. And I think that made it feel manageable, because instead of sitting down and planning a 60-person, 100-person event in a week, we really broke it up into chunks. And that also led to the opportunity, and I think this is a really important one, of getting feedback. So I was often asking for feedback on the look and feel of the event space, or getting feedback on the design of our promotional materials. But by building out a timeline that felt manageable and reasonable, I think we were able to accomplish it without it taking away from other daily tasks.
I think you were so wise to give yourself that runway to not only have enough time to plan it well, but then to also get feedback and then implement that feedback, not just sit on it. I think that was so wise. For anyone who has planned an event, particularly an audience who doesn't want to pre-register for an event, we know the struggle there, right? For GatherTown, I know that they kind of default to, they want the participants to pre-register. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julie. But how did you go about that? How did you promote the event, and how did you work around the pre-register option?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So just backing up a little bit, GatherTown is free to use for a certain number of users. So it is available for free for 25 users, synchronous users. So at the same time, concurrent participants. So beyond that 25 threshold, that's when you do need to pay per person. And so there's a couple options there. As you mentioned, you could ask people to pre-register RSVP, right? So we could send out save the dates, get an RSVP list going, and then we would have a better benchmark of how many participants to anticipate and to pay for. We historically at the TLC have not required participants to pre-register. And so we wanted to create that opportunity for people to drop in or, day of, realize they had more time and could come. We estimated based on our attendance at other events and came up with, a number that we felt was reasonable, but also would allow some flexibility if people needed to drop or needed to come into the event day of. So we went about it that way. Another alternative, as you mentioned, would be to require people to register and then distribute the link to only those who registered. So there's a lot of different options depending on your flexibility with budget or timing. For others who might be interested in leading an event like this, there is that opportunity. And again, it is free to use for under 25 concurrent participants, which is a really great option, great for classrooms, team meetings, things like that. But for those bigger events, finding where you feel comfortable, whether that's the pre-registering RSVP option or being more flexible.
And I remember this discussion about how to handle, the attendance challenge, knowing our faculty are very busy and sometimes, students drop in and prevents them to showing up. It'd be very difficult to have a pinpoint number, which impacted the budget. Very challenging. Would you say that that was your biggest challenge in planning this, or was it something else?
I think it was definitely the biggest piece that was ambiguous because we didn't quite know how to get an accurate number, right? We knew how to estimate, but we didn't know if we were going to be overestimating. And then, there'd be the kind of this extra bandwidth on the server that we were paying for. One of the biggest challenges was that this is a new technology. And so wanting people who are participating to feel comfortable, we went about that by setting expectations with those who would be serving as presenters, as well as those who'd be in the audience and participating on the day. Again, I'm really blown away. People really embraced this new technology. And it's a little bit of a different one, right? It's the Zoom. You sit at a screen, right? You sit in front of your camera and the tiles don't move. And, it's pretty straightforward. With GatherTown, you're moving around the space and who you can talk to changes based on where you are and how close they are to you. And you can follow people around and you can click on objects and interact with them. So it's a really different experience. And so I think that was maybe the biggest challenge, that activation energy and the learning curve associated with using new technologies. But I think people really embraced it.
I have to share something funny. So we were doing the GatherTown event. My soon-to-be 8-year-old comes up and she goes, "Oh my goodness, Mom, are you playing Roblox? That avatar looks just like my avatar." So I do not play Roblox, but there are some similarities to and I always think back to Mario Brothers. It just brought out the inner child a little bit in me. So I was super excited to get into this. Spoiler for anyone, it is not like Super Mario Brothers, so don't worry about that. But for me, the biggest win was what you had said. People got into a new tool that they had never seen before, never used before, and took the journey. That right there, #win for sure. Julie, what do you think was your biggest win?
Yeah, I think that was really incredible to see. Like you mentioned, Brittany, I think something else for me, after all those months of planning, it was so cool to start seeing people pop up into the space. I think my eyes just went so wide, right? Because it was for so long had just been maybe the three of us or, a couple others in the space walking around. And then to see 60 people moving around and using different avatars and video cameras popping up and you'd walk past conversations. It was really incredible. I think, though, I've heard some incredible feedback about the conversations that had happened in the space and how those were jumping off points for further conversations and collaborations and project ideas. We've heard from folks who met in the space and realized they were doing or had similar research interests as someone else. And now that's turning into a collaboration, or people who are interested in using this tool in their own way and in their own teaching. So I think, to me, the biggest win and the really aligned with the goal was that this was a jumping off point, that this is a trampoline, not one static opportunity, but really a place where people could get to know one another, get to know who to ask your questions to, and begin to have these conversations that would hopefully continue after the event ended. And I think we're seeing that happen.
I totally agree with that. We have heard a couple occasions where somebody has said, oh yeah, I met them, or they were in discussion, and then this event kind of helped solidify a direction and some sort of collaboration. We have heard that no more than one occasion. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. But I think for me, just butting in, my favorite part was at one point we had 60 plus people. Your avatar pops up and is like, "Hey, follow me to the main hall where we're going to do the ceremony." And everybody's following you because of the features. I felt like, yeah, well, you got all the powerful people at the university, following you in their little characters. It was pretty awesome to see that. So on a lot of levels, but no, I thought that was a lot of fun. There were so many positives that I saw too. It's come up since then. Can't wait to do it again. Something like that again.
Yeah, no, you're right. It did feel a little bit like follow the leader. It was pretty funny to watch everyone kind of swarm, right? But yeah, it was just so wonderful to see everyone embrace it, move around the space, and explore. And that's what it was about.
If you've hung out with us, I know you've heard this before. It's not just about the technology. The technology facilitates what our goals were. And the goal I'm hearing over and over was to facilitate conversations about educational research. What was happening around the university? How do we get the word out? How do we honor and recognize the work that's being done? And how do we multiply that work? But I want to drill in on the tool because we do get so many questions about using new technology and how do we set people up for success. So when we do decide to pick a technology, that process in itself can be very overwhelming. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to select a technology tool? How do they pick that option that would best suit their needs? What advice would you give?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think you said it as well, which is figuring out your goals and then picking the tools that are going to align with that. I think that intentionality, that alignment is really key. And on the same, or maybe another hand, picking something that feels reasonable and manageable, right? Something that you have some familiarity with, or starting small. I had attended events in GatherTown prior to this idea, so I wasn't starting from scratch, and I had gotten to kind of know what it was. So that definitely helped me come up to speed with it and to pick the tool. I think it really comes back to alignment, not using the tool just for the tool's sake, but as every element of the event and the tool aligned with what we were hoping for, right? We wanted that event that would feel more like it was in person. We wanted people to talk in small groups. Well, if we wanted people to talk in small groups and have side conversations and get to know one another, breakout rooms are possible. People can move around now in breakout rooms and move between them back and forth. So that is a start, but it doesn't really facilitate that same feel of being able to walk around and kind of bump into people and have those side conversations, share ideas, and that spontaneity, right? I think there's something really special about being in person and walking past someone at the right time and you hear, a buzzword, right? Or a keyword, and it just really stands out to you and you're like, hey, can I join in? What's happening here, right? That doesn't really happen well in Zoom. And so I think that was so important, so critical to the feel of the event that we were going for, that's kind of the through line to me for the technology. Is the tool facilitated what we were looking for. Without it, it would have been a very different type of event.
Such great points. I want to highlight one thing that just popped up. So when we were planning this event, we weren't meeting in person. We weren't gathering in large groups. And with some of the pandemic restrictions lessening, most people want to run back maybe to in person. However, have you ever been part of an event where maybe you're joining virtually and you maybe don't feel as part of the conversation, or you feel kind of left on the fringes?
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
A technology tool that brings everybody together on the same level playing field would help facilitate a better dialogue. Maybe. And that might be part of your goal. So maybe this isn't like, oh, that was fun, but let's get back to in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another side of what you're bringing up is the the inclusion, equity, and access piece. So for people who are around the country and other campuses, if we're having an event in Arizona, someone from Missouri may not be able to come in person, as well as events in GatherTown can help to promote that accessibility and inclusion in so many different ways. And one of the things I really love about it as well, you mentioned your avatar, right? And your daughter sharing that she, had had a reaction to the avatar. Something I love about GatherTown is it allows people to choose their expression, right? You can change your clothes, you can change your hair, you can change so many things about how you're choosing to present yourself in this space. It can be really fun, but it can also be really meaningful. And I had attended a conference, a multi-day international conference in GatherTown previously, early in the summer of 2021. For some people, that would have been the only way they would have been able to participate in the same way. And so I think that that's really interesting and important to think about as we go back to a place where more and more people are gathering in person, is thinking intentionally about how do we create that accessibility and that inclusion piece, and including all people, all of our presenters and all of our audience in a way where they can all engage together. And I think GatherTown has really thought through what that looks like in a number of different ways. And so I think it's a really great tool to consider, even as, right, I think some people are really wanting to rush back in person. I think there are advantages in thinking about how can we gather meaningfully virtually, and why would we do that?
Oh, that's fantastic insight, because one of the things we want to do, due to the nature and the structure and the geolocation, the geographical locations of our campuses, we want to figure out ways to bring folks together. We seem to hear it all the time, like, oh, we have this problem on this campus. We'd love somebody to help us address it. And I'm like, oh, well, they're doing it on this other campus. They have the solution, or they're working on a solution, and kind of bridging those gaps. So in some ways, like, GatherTown kind of was could be a facilitation tool to make that, to bridge those gaps. Thinking about it from your own perspective, and then thinking about it from what you saw, thinking about what we know of our folks here at ATSU, how would you describe the time that it takes to spin up on GatherTown? Because no matter how awesome it is at allowing everyone to show up as their authentic self in new ways that we usually don't consider at ATSU, it all hinges upon their comfort with using the tool. So how would you describe that? What did you see in ramping up with the tool?
Yeah, it's such a great question, right? We mentioned that this is kind of a different experience than what we've been used to with virtual meetings. In Zoom, you sit in front of your camera and you might push the mute button to talk, but you're not moving around, right? So I think for me, as I mentioned, I did have some previous experience using the tool. I'm not a gamer. So I'm not used to moving an avatar around a virtual environment. That's not something I do a lot. So I think it took me, a couple minutes to get used to, okay, how do I, move my person around? I think the big thing with GatherTown, and maybe this sounds funny to say because it's obviously a virtual environment, but I think the more you can think about it like it's in person, the more it makes sense. So if I'm, in the virtual space with the three of you, and Brittany, you're down on the bottom right, and Quincy, you're on the top left. If I think about that kind of like an office space or a classroom or a campus, I have to walk over to you, Quincy, to begin to have a conversation. Whereas in Zoom, that's so totally different, right? I might send you a chat, which is a feature in GatherTown, but to be able to connect with you, to have my microphone turn on and my video camera turn on, I have to physically move my avatar in the virtual space over to yours. So I think there's kind of that learning curve of remembering how the analogy, I guess, between this virtual environment and the kind of in-person, live physical interactions. Similarly, to be able to interact with, say, a microphone or a game or a video screen in the virtual environment in GatherTown, you have to move up to it. And then you can press X on your keyboard to open it and activate it. So you can't do that from across the room. Like I wouldn't be able to, pick up my water bottle if I'm not near it. So I think kind of that takes a minute to really begin to associate, okay, how do I have to interact in this space? How do I move around? how does this work? And then once it does, I think then it's really fun, right? I think Brittany, you mentioned that there's kind of this, it's professional and it's productive, but there is a fun element to it. You get to move around and see people, and they have avatars, and they might have a funny hat on, or or the space looks really different. So I think it can take a second. I think, like with anything, being patient with it. It may not come right away. You have to figure out how to connect your camera. You have to figure out how to connect your microphone. And I think there was that same learning curve with Zoom. We've just now become a lot more used to Zoom. So I think with the new technology, it's translating that, recognizing there might be a learning curve, but being patient with it, it'll come. And like with anything else, asking for help. That's one of the reasons we had the docents there to help support that process. And I think that was really successful.
Oh, I'm not downplaying it. I had so much fun messing around my little avatar, throwing confetti when I felt like somebody did a nice job. I don't know if anybody else was throwing confetti as much as me. Probably not. But no, I had so much fun. And you kind of hit on the docents, the technology people who were roaming around and checking on people and making sure they weren't running into any technology issues. I think that was so smart to think about that ahead of time. I think we all had that secret fear. Oh my gosh, they're going to get in, they're going to panic, and then they're just going to bolt because they're not going to want to take the journey. They're not going to want to try and fix whatever technology glitch they may have found. Was there anything that you kind of thought about other than the docents that you were like, I've got this and this, all these safeguards in place? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think for some of it, it was having a pretty clear idea of what the schedule was going to be and having that built-in structure. I think that was really helpful for our event because we wanted people to interact in different ways throughout the hour. So I think having that structure, the promotional materials that we put out had a schedule. There was a little bit of this known element. Maybe the technology is new, but I kind of know what to expect at each given time, and I know where I need to be. And then the rest kind of came. So I think that was really helpful. I think that could look very different for other types of events where you would want more wandering or exploring. But for us, we really wanted people to know what to expect and what to do when and where and why. So I think that was helpful of keeping us on track. It's easy for an hour to go by so fast. So I think the schedule definitely helped us, but I think it also helped people know, where to be. That's always, I don't know about you guys. Sometimes it's the hardest part for me at an in-person conference. In a big conference center, you got a list of talks you want to go to and running back and forth and how do you get between them? And so I think with this, we really wanted that to be clear to our participants.
Well, and I wish there were an in-person feature where I could just say, I want to follow that person and always know where to go.
Absolutely.
I would never get lost.
That's funny. That's funny. To kind of put a bow on this idea of the technology, and then I want to open it up. Hopefully, we can open the conversation up to more general ideas. But given the nature of ATSU and the job that we're responsible for, what advice would you give if the next person, maybe it's ourselves, what would your advice be the next time that we considered doing this, or one of our listeners was considering an event, no matter how big, small, and they wanted to use a virtual environment like GatherTown? What advice would you have?
I think it's about setting the bar really high, right? What is it that this technology can allow you to do in a new way? And so I think about, for us being able to host an event like this again, being able to reach more people who maybe haven't come to to a TLC event before, or sharing their research. Maybe it's a poster presentation. So all these things where, I could be presenting in Arizona and someone could be presenting their poster in California. That's really exciting. That's not really able to be facilitated on Zoom in the same way. So I think it's, setting that bar high, thinking outside the box as well. How can this tool be used in your classrooms, in your team meetings, in your office hours? How can it be used to help build community in your classes or in your department? And thinking, what can this tool allow me to do intentionally and within the predetermined goal? Because I think it can sometimes be easy to say, oh, I heard about this really cool thing, now let me make it fit. And that can be a challenge because sometimes it can be a slippery slope, right? The tool is hard to use or it doesn't fit the goal. But I do think there is value in thinking, now that I've seen this as an option, what does it allow me to do in a really new and exciting way? And how do I kind of use it to be innovative and build upon what is important to me in my teaching and learning or in my department?
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas on that.
Okay, so now that you've launched this successful event using this tool, can you describe for our listeners what may be some of the opportunities you see for our faculty and staff to use GatherTown to create better virtual interactions?
Absolutely. And I really do think the sky's the limit. I think, and I'll try not to throw out too many ideas here, but I think it could be used in so many different ways. I think, for classrooms, think about group discussions, virtual office hours. What about case studies where people are moving around to different tables, right? And having discussions in a way that you can't do, or that you can do in person maybe, but this allows for in a really fun way. I think about bringing groups of people together who aren't normally together in one place. So interprofessional interactions, or can you have experts at each table, right? And you get to move around and explore or interview or get their advice on a case or a question. Could it be used for assessment? Maybe, right? Could it be kind of like an OSCE? Could you have stations, not with real patients, but with standardized patients, and you're moving around and practicing skills related to telehealth or taking patient histories or, patient interviews or education. So I think there's so many ways it can be used in the classroom relating to the TLC teaching and learning model. I think it could be feedback. It could be content delivery. It could be assessment. So I think there's so many ways that it can be used there. I also think, about virtual conferences like ours, but even bigger. I mentioned that I'd been to a full multi-day international conference within this platform. So it can be really used to facilitate small and large research symposia or working groups. And as much as it can be used for those highly professional, highly productive meetings, it's also really fun for holiday parties, right? Get group gatherings or having people really just explore and have fun. There's options to play board games together, to chat and get to know one another. So I think it can be used really across the whole spectrum of daily activities. And I know that there are groups now who are using it to actually have virtual offices. So while you're working from home, you can kind of feel like you're in with your teammates. You can build your own office area. It might look for Brittany like by a pond, and it might look for Quincy like he's in a library. It can look so different for each person. They can customize it, but we can all be in the same place together. And I do want to note for others who might be interested in using this, that there are options within the platform to create spaces for individual conversations. So as much as it can be used to have these spontaneous, kind of hallway conversations and water cooler moments, there are also ways to build private spaces where it can be a more individualized conversation. I like to kind of think about that like inviting someone into your office and closing the door. So you can have those conversations. You can have places where students are asking questions or interacting with a standardized patient where everyone can't hear. So that functionality is built into the platform. So the sky's the limit.
Yeah, you have a pretty good all-encompassing comprehensive list there. I would say, from the research specific lens, like we've been saying all the way through this episode, is that this is a great way to perhaps celebrate the wins and the way, your vision here of making it network, no matter where you were in your process of your research, the phase of your research. This is an opportunity like, hey, look what we've done. Very cool. We need more of that. We need to facilitate more opportunities for that. That's how great research happens and is incentivized. If you're in the middle of it, like, hey, I'm stuck. We're about to enter the data analysis phase. Cool. Oh, there's some stats. Research report has some great statisticians available. May want to make a phone call there. Or if you're early, we need to find the right people to join a team, or you're looking to enhance an idea, resources maybe you're doing with students, and somebody's doing something similar or has available students that fit your needs for your study. So I could probably go all day about the application in the research realm at ATSU. And then don't get me started. Now we can start bringing in outside external experts. We can start, it doesn't have to be limited to educational research, right? This is just where we started because of our aim, our purpose of the university. But Then I also think about patient care, simulated patient care. Um, I know we focus hard in our assessment on those micro skills, right? The differential diagnosis of patients, looking at the systems, those things. But it starts when the patient hits the door. There are things that we could train in the classroom, perhaps. And I think about, the sim clinic. Some of our programs have the simulated clinic in rotations where they leave the campus. What if you simulated all of that before they even left the campus? Before they left it, you could do all that stuff in the classroom. I think those are all opportunities too. And I do think GatherTown does a pretty good job. It was really stable. It was really easy to get into. You worked really hard of laying out the safety net for our folks, providing tutorials, job aids, all sorts of cool things. So even if people got stuck, they got the hang of it. But once you were in there, most people were waddling their little characters all the way around, popping glitter, confetti all over the place there. It was pretty cool. So the fact that people were provide pretty functional in there, pretty quick, I would say that the sky really is the limit, and that we should consider it again, and that maybe we can bring in different departments, same department, different campus, different topics, different focus. Let's do it. Let's go.
Okay, I think you have totally sold us, Julie. Where can our community go if they are interested in getting started and planning their own event using GatherTown?
Yeah, absolutely. One great place to start is learning a little bit more about GatherTown and making sure it works for you and the goal of your event. So I would really encourage you to check out the GatherTown website and learn a little bit more about it. The great thing too about GatherTown is you can create an account and begin making spaces or demoing ones that already exist. And so you can get familiar with the tool before you go to make your space. So I think that's a great place to start. Try moving around, explore what's out there. You can use their templates to start. You can create your own and just kind of get your feet wet and see what this would look like and feel like. Another great place to start if you're interested in learning more about the tool and what it looks like on a participant side is actually the demo videos we've already created. So on the TLC Learning channel on YouTube, we've linked to several demo videos where you can learn about how to use your keyboard to navigate, what happens as you begin to approach someone and talk, and learn more about what it looks like. So I would encourage you to start in those two places. One is learning a little bit more about the platform itself, and another is a little bit more of the hands-on, very clear step-by-step. How do I get started? How do I move my avatar? Where do I click?
Awesome. And we will link directly to those videos and to the GatherTown directly in the show notes. Thank you, Julie.
Huge thanks to Dr. Julie Speer for not only her time here today. Can't say enough about the great insights she shared with us today. I hope that this will be actionable for our listeners, where you can understand when and why you might consider GatherTown and all the options. Some considerations if you do pick up the baton and offer something, and then maybe ways to make it better. I really appreciated that during our conversation here today. As both Brittany and Julia said today, set your goals and then pick the tools, technology that will help you accomplish those goals. Be intentional. Fantastic. With that being said, huge shout out to Dr. Speer. Thank you to my co-presenter here today, Brittany. It was fun. Thanks to Brenda in behind the curtain making this all happen. And thanks for each of you for listening. This will be our last episode for this spring's educational research theme podcast series. Stay tuned. We hope to do something more like this in the fall in the future, perhaps. Let us know. Give us a shout out. Let us know what you liked about it, what you'd like to see more of, and maybe there's another topic you're interested in. So I hope our listeners let us know. And let us know if you're considering GatherTown. We would love to hear from you. And maybe Julie will have some pointers for you. You can reach out to her directly. Otherwise, thank you to everyone. Thanks for doing a great job working to make our students the professionals that they strive to be. Everyone between and all our campuses for the support and for all the great positive feedback that you've given us. This has been a lot of fun. I don't know. What do you think, Brittany, Julie?
So much fun, and honing the podcasting skills. That it's going to take me a little bit more time, but this has been a joy to do.
I agree. I'm a big podcast listener, so this has been a lot of fun to be on the other side of the microphone and to get to talk to all of you.
Yeah, I'm glad to have done this with each of you. This was a great idea, a great way to reach some folks that maybe we weren't before, and just I don't know. I feel like super hip now. We got we're part of it. We're part of the culture. We did a podcast. So make sure to click the information below to find out more about GatherTown. Let us know what you thought. Leave a comment or two. Feel free to share this with a friend, a colleague, and then make sure you get that level up credit for listening here today. You'll also see the link below the description to let us know that you listened to this. You'll get credit. If you need to know more about the Level Up certificate program, be sure to check out the link there to learn more about that on the website. Anyway, thanks for the time and attention. All the best to you. Can't wait to hear from you next. Stay tuned. Bye for now.